I am joined today by Brian McCarthy. Hello, Brian.
Hi, good morning, Andy. How are you?
I'm fine. Now, I need to point out that we have been brought together by Deborah Green of Redeeming Our Communities because Deborah said to you and to me, "Oh, you guys, I think you get on well. Let me introduce you." And let me just tell you, thank you, Deborah. And yes, we get on very well.
Yeah, we do. Thank you, Deborah.
Now, let's just jump straight into how you got to know Deborah. I guess is because you used to lead the CPA. Let's just start there and we'll move on. But what was the CPA? What is the CPA, and what was your role within it?
Okay, right. So CPA is the Christian Police Association. It was started in 1883 by a lady called Catherine Gurney, and it was meant to bring well-being to officers because they were dying on duty. So I won't go into the whole long big story, but in 2005 I became a Christian. I was a police officer. I joined the police in 1995. Wasn't a Christian when I joined. I would have ticked a box to say I was a Christian, but I really didn't understand faith. So shortly after I became a Christian, I realised the Christian Police Association was there, joined, and I quickly became a branch leader of Cleveland Police, Christian Police Branch. And Sir Matt Baggett was the president of CPA at the time. And he brought Deborah along as a guest speaker at the leaders' conference. And she just blew me away. Oh, man alive. So I had no idea what God can do to communities. And I was listening to what Deborah does, and she was saying about unity, church unity, where there is unity, God commands a blessing, Psalm 133. But I was like, okay, right, I hear that, but what does it mean practically? And then she started telling us about this event she'd had at an arena. I think it was in Manchester. Oh my goodness, it might have been Liverpool. But there was, I think, 7,000 people there, 7 chief constables. They had neighbourhood teams there, and they were playing worship music, and my mind was just like getting blown here. I'm like, whoa, there's no way I could get the neighbourhood team to come to a meeting, a CPA meeting in Cleveland. And so then she really blew my mind because she was saying that there was football fans in the place. And when they were repenting of their bitterness and rivalry, they started swapping football scarves. So I'm sitting there crying like a flipping, just bawling my eyes out. Because I grew up in Glasgow. There's no way people would swap football scarves, Andy. There's no, unless it was God. That's so anyway, with a big lump in my throat, I went to see her afterwards, and I got this book called City Change in Prayer. And came back to Cleveland, and I set about trying to make church unity happen in my own way. So CPA at the time had a thing called COACT. So it was like God's timing. Everything just started to come together and mesh together, and all our partners started working with us, and Redeeming Our Communities was one of our partners. So we would invite Redeeming Our Communities, or we would try to help that community conversations to take place, because when it happens, crime goes down, community cohesion goes up, and that's what the police are all about. They're all about community cohesion and helping people, empowering people to look after their own little square of the world. And when it happens, it's amazing. It's amazing what happens. And I haven't seen anybody changing football scarves yet, but walking alongside Deborah has been a real blessing. I've been to community conversations, went to one in York, and she brings the people in the community who are like really vocal and saying, this isn't right, that's not right, the council. Those are the people she wants in the meetings, because those are the people who will change things. No matter if they've got faith, no faith, any faith, bring them in and let their passion drive the activity. And then she's like, it's like a speed dating operation. So say, like, here's the health, the education, and the police. They're looking for people who want to make a change. Here, you're the people who want to make a change. And she links them up, and over the course of a year, basically helps people to grow. But anyway, so CPA branch leader, I tried and I ran out of steam. And God I felt God speaking to me that he wanted me to go and put salt in the River Tees. So I live on Tees side, right? And this sounds absolutely bonkers, I know it does. So I went to church and I was like, I think God's telling me to go and put salt in the River Tees. And there's this lady at church, Deborah Robson, and she's as crazy as me for Jesus, right? We just live out our faith. We know Jesus is real. We know he loves us and he loves the people around us and he wants change. So he knew I wanted unity and he gave me a way of working towards it, because in my own strength, we were holding meetings and there was me, Mike Quinnell, the regional coordinator for CPA, and my pastor, Jez. We'd put on sandwiches and stuff and the three of us would be eating the sandwiches. But when two or more are gathered in his name, Jesus is there. If anybody's listening and wondering, you only need two people. In fact, you only need your prayers and God can hear you and he will do things in response to it. So anyway, I was days off on this Thursday and we went up to 2015, we went up to High Force in Teesdale. It's where they filmed Robin Hood, that like the scene where he's swimming in a waterfall, the old one with Kevin Costner. So we went up there and we put some salt in the river. To be fair, we put a little bit of olive oil in it as well, and we lit some candles. And we were praying for church unity, that this salt would like pour down Tees Valley and bring this unity with it to the churches. So anyway, I got worn out, stopped doing the church unity stuff, and there was one Sunday, there's a pastor called Stephen Sutton, had been working on church unity, and I'd seen this advert that at Tees Valley Community Church there was going to be a meeting for church unity. At this point, I'm the Christian Police Association branch leader, and it was quite dry ground. We'd, like I say, have meetings and there'd be a few people would turn up. But we were doing our best, and we'd managed to have a CPA conference in Cleveland, which was brilliant. And we showed all the COAC stuff to people. They took it all back to where they were around the country. An amazing guy called Albert Dickin that was amazing. He would bring all these charity leads from all over the northeast to Tees Valley Community Church. And I mean, this was a unity happening right in front of me, and I wasn't seeing it right. But all these folk leading, and he'd run Dickens Emporium. It was a DIY place in the days before we had big superstores. And his business prowess, he was teaching people how to run charities. But he'd bring in folk like Andy Hawthorne from the Message Trust, John Kirkby from CAP. So we'd be speaking to all these big, George Verwer from the Mercy Ships. I met George Verwer, and just round the corner from where I live. So Albert Dickin was bringing all these amazing people. And so from there, I made all these network contacts. And then we went, prayed, put the salt in the river. There was a lady called Tracy Britton. She was a social worker at the time. She felt God tell her to give up her house in the posh part of Middlesbrough and move to Winniebanks, which was a council house in the estate. She did it. And we used to go and pray each week for Teesside and for Middlesbrough and for church unity. So anyway, cut long story short, it's a Sunday, we had my mother-in-law around for Sunday dinner, and I was like, there's a church unity thing on tonight, but I don't know if I've got the strength to go to it. And my wife's like, well, you can go if you want. I was like, okay, maybe I'll go just to see how it's going. So this is now 2019, 4 years after the Salt in the River. And as I'm driving there, I got out my car, and this Facebook notification popped up that said, 4 years ago today, you were putting salt in the River Tees. There's pictures of me and Deborah. And I was like, oh, wow. So I got out my car. I couldn't get near the church because the car park was full. In fact, all the curbs were full. There was cars all over the verges. Dumped my car and I'm walking towards the church and a big lump in my throat. I was like, oh, man, is this happening? Is this really happening? And I went in, there was 1,300 people, all from different churches and denominations, Andy, in the room. There was no seats left. There wasn't even any carpet left that you could stand on. And this is a big room. And so Deborah Robson, who I'd put the salt in the river with, was standing next to Tracy Britton, who I'd prayed for Teesside Church Unity with. And they went, come on, stand with us. And they put me, it's making me emotional. They put me in the middle. I couldn't sing, I couldn't speak. Just to see what I'd prayed for right in front of us, Andy. Just amazing. Just amazing, but
it's amazing what God, doesn't it? When we obey him, and then the important part, when we obey him and then let him do his work, which could be 4 years, it could be 4 weeks, 4 hours, but we need to be obedient and then wait. I love that bit in Joshua, be strong and courageous, and it grows and grows, and you get on, be strong and very courageous. But I always think the courageous part is the waiting part. It's the falling off the cliff knowing it's not going to let you hit the bottom, when you're thinking, why have I just left something that's really good or done something crazy like pouring salt in a river? Like, what's that ever going to achieve? And yet, through that act of obedience and then waiting, which is the courageous part, you saw this amazing thing happen.
Saw it right in front of me, and it gets better. Do you know what? There was people, after I told them about the salt in the river and things, lots of folks said, oh, he told me to put salt in the river, but I didn't do it. And this is the thing. If God calls you to do something, even if it's crazy, like telling, like you say, Joshua, to go into this land and take the land, or Gideon, he's hiding in a wine press, to go and take this army, but leave all these people. He starts off with tens of thousands and ends up with 300. But if you do it, what he tells you to do instead of doing it your own way, oh my goodness. So anyway, I became, my last couple of years of work, I got bullied and I was off work poorly. And there was a pastor in Stockton, a lady called Kath Harris at Destiny Church. She was running a Global Leadership Network Summit. She phoned me up. She says, look, Brian, you're going to think I'm crazy, potentially. She says, but I think God's told me to invite you to this summit. She says, but please don't tell anybody, because they're all paying a fortune to be here. It's the thing that when we go try not to tell people because you think yourself, people think I'm crazy, you end up telling everybody, because when it comes that God does the reveal. So I went there, learned all this amazing stuff. My last 2 years of work were great. I knew how to deal with the bullies. I knew how to manage conflict. I knew how to deal with rejection. And I just had a ball. The last 2 years of work were fantastic. And age 55, God gave me just enough at temporary inspector work to change my pension to being a full sergeant's pension, even though I finished 2 years early. So I got the pension I would have got had I stayed till I was age 57. But in the February, March, Lee Russell, the executive director of CPA, phoned me up and said, I'm retiring, Brian. Do you know anybody that's coming up to retirement soon that might be interested in exec director? I says, well, I could retire in November. I said, but you don't think I could do your job, do you? Is that? You'd be great at it. So I was like, flipping it. So I applied for it, and they said that even if other people had applied, I was the only person that applied. They put it out nationally. If anybody else had applied, we'd still have given me the job. You knocked us away, blew us away in the interview. So I was like, oh my goodness. So then my last 6 months at the job were amazing, because I knew I had a great job to go to as well. And I could retire early. So retired early and then stepped into being executive director of CPA. And do you know what? For 2.5 years, I had a ball. I was producing a national magazine. I was linking in with all these great Christian bodies like yourself, like Deborah Green, like Sue Sinclair, Community Watchman Ministries, like Graham Seed from Sown Seed Ministries. All these amazing people. I got them to come and speak at our conferences, and I went to their conferences, and just, Andy, it was such a blessing from God. But then in the December 2023, I'd been doing it for 2 years. I was driving over to Preston for a Christmas Carol concert, and God spoke to me really clearly. I'd been praying in tongues all the way across, just seeking God's, because I was in the car on my own, so I thought, I'll just seek God's face. And he said to me, I want you to resign from CPA. I was like, is that you, Lord? And I know it was him because he said, I want you to resign forthwith. And I didn't know what forthwith meant. I had to Google it. So I Googled forthwith, and it meant that because I was trying to find out how much leeway I had. And it meant immediately. So I prayed. I was like, look, Lord, I went to the carol concert, didn't tell anybody. On the way home, I was praying in tongues all the way back again. He says, look, Brian, I need you to open your hands and let go of CPA so I can give you something bigger. And then, so I got home and he told me, I want you to tell your wife. I was like, man, there's like an 8 o'clock prayer meeting in the morning. I want to be there. But it's just like, I drove back from Preston, so it's like 11 o'clock, half 11 at night. I thought, if I tell Kath, it's not going to be an early night. So he's like, I want you to tell her. So I was like, oh, man. Told her, and she's like, why do you want to leave CPA? I said, I don't want to leave CPA. God's told me to leave CPA. And so, about 3 in the morning, I got to bed, set my alarm, with a very tearful wife that just didn't have a clue what was going on. And I went to the prayer meeting in the morning with the church leaders. The church unity is really good here. And I spoke to Kath Harris from Destiny Church, and I spoke to Phil Cartmel. Didn't tell him what was going on, but I said, could you give me some prophecy, some prophetic prayer? And Phil Cartmel said to me, God's given you new shoes to run. Okay. Right. And I said to Kath, I said, could I come and speak to you in private, please? And I went along on the Friday. I prayed to God. I was like, look, I know you said forthwith. Can I just check this out? Well, I was laying out fleeces, a bit like Gideon, just to make sure it was God speaking to me and not my imagination. And not, it's good to check these things, isn't it? And Kath and Jonathan sat and listened to me on the Friday, and they're like, yeah, Brian, this is God. So I went and contacted the trustees, put in my resignation. But I loved CPA. I love CPA still. And Deborah Akinlawan, I recruited her. But I already knew, because God showed me on my first day as a CPA exec director, that she was going to be coming after me. Mm. And she again, wasn't the strongest, on paper, not the strongest candidate of the 5 people that applied, but she absolutely blew us away, blew the trustees away in the interview. I wasn't allowed to interview because obviously it's a conflict of interests. But the trustees interviewed her and interviewed 3 people, and she blew us away. She's amazing. And she's able to do things that I couldn't do. And she's the first woman to lead CPA since Catherine Gurney started it in 1883. And she's a woman of colour as well, a black woman of Nigerian descent. But she was the branch leader. She's fantastic, isn't she?
Yeah.
I'll absolutely love her. And she's really brought a new dimension to CPA. I love it. I love what's happening. But if the listeners get a chance, look up CPA, because they appear to be the best kept 140-year-old secret in the country. People always say, there's a Christian Police Association. Really? And yeah, there is. And they're supporting like 4,000 members across the country. There's branches in every one of the forces, every one of the police services across the country. They don't like saying force anymore. Police service, which is fair enough, isn't it? Because we are public servants. I loved being in the police as well. Do you know, my mum had alcohol problems when I was a kid, Andy, just to give the people a bit of background how I ended up in the police, because a lot of people struggle to trust the police. There's been some landmark things that have really damaged trust, and I get that. But 99.9% of my colleagues went in there, joined to make a difference, and are making a difference. There's people who should never have put on a uniform, have managed to get through the processes and have caused havoc. But police are public servants, and my mum had alcohol problems, and she used to get arrested from the house. She would assault my dad and attack my dad which is a bit unusual for domestic violence to be that way around, but it does happen. And they'd come and arrest her. They didn't always want to arrest her because she loved singing, and she'd sing all night in the cells, so the police would try and avoid arresting her if they could, but they would take her in. And but they brought peace to our house, and I wanted to do that for other people. That's why I became a police officer, and I think I managed to do that for the most part, because I loved conflict management. And can I tell you the story?
Go for it.
Right. So there was a lady, and I'm not speaking at school, there was a lady in Thornaby, and she made a complaint against the police because she'd made a complaint that she'd been a victim of a racial attack. Kids had rounded on her and threw snowballs at her. She had a little 3-year-old son with her. And they let all the white people go past, all the local people, they went past, and she was an asylum seeker and they attacked her with snowballs. It was a racist incident, absolutely, and it was an assault. And the police who came to deal with it, she'd recorded them because she was trying to tell them, and they just weren't getting it. They weren't getting it at all. But we have snow in this country. She's like, I haven't just arrived, I've been here for 3 years. I know people have snowball fights. These people attack me, and they're like, she says, okay if I record you, and they were dead polite and everything, but it's like they needed an interpreter. They were not understanding what she was saying. So they said on the radio, this is not a racist incident. Obviously, they got back to the Nick, and the Nick, that's what we call it, the police station, right? And 45 minutes later, you saw on the message in the control room that it changed to a racist incident. I suspect the sergeant probably looked at it and said, what are you doing? Of course it's a racist incident. Get it recorded, because if any person thinks it's a racist incident, then it's a racist incident. That's what the rules were in those days. But so I went to deal with her complaint against police. And what I did was the stuff I'd learned at Kath's global leadership thing was active listening. There's a guy called Chris Voss he's an FBI hostage negotiator, and he talks all about active listening and empathy. I love it. I love it. So I listened to this lady for 45 minutes, didn't interrupt her, so I could actually hear what her problem was. And then once I heard her problem, I said to her, look, do you know? I said, the only right that you don't have that I have is the right to work. I said, everything else, you've got all the same rights as me, even I'm a sergeant in the police. And she's like, really? I was like, yeah. I said, these kids have got no right to bother you. And a little lad, the little lad couldn't go in the garden. He had a trampoline, but people would throw stuff over the fence and shout insults. So I also said to her, do you know what the police did after they visited you? She said, no. So they'd done a pretty poor job in the first place because they didn't understand it. The second bit, they'd done a poor job because they never told her all the great work they did after they left. They checked CCTV, they went to the schools, they did house to house. So I fired up my laptop and I showed her the investigation on my laptop, and she's like, she was absolutely floored with the good work they'd done, and they never told her about it. Why would you do that? Why would you miss the opportunity to actually show people how good you are? So anyway, after that, she Sky News heard about it, and they invited her in for an interview to say how terrible the police are, right? So saying to her, right, you had this racist incident. Yeah, I did. They told them all about the kids, and just she was on Sky News. And they said, but what did the police do about it? She says, the boss came round to my house. Brian McCarthy, he opened my mind. It was amazing. So just by listening to her, just aiming to find out what's causing that person pain, it's so important. But so anyway, they kept trying to change the thing around to how bad the police are, but she kept saying, oh, well, no, I'm an advocate now. So because I understand it, I tell other asylum seekers about it. So she'd become, from being a complainant to becoming somebody who actually represents the police, advocates for the police. And so what she did at home, the kids were coming to play in the northeast. They call it Nicky Knocky Nido, right? They knock on the door and run away, or they press your bell. And so she's laying her upstairs, and she was looking at the window, saw these kids coming to the door, and she opened the door and she said, right, I know your mum, I know your mum. And they're like, oh, please don't tell our mums. So after that, peace. In fact, she went on to become a teaching assistant at the school when she got the opportunity. And the same kids who used to be a pain in the neck were now calling her miss. So her life changed completely, but she knew she had the right. She didn't have to put up with all this rubbish. But so I love it. I used to do other same things. So bringing peace to people is really important to me. And one of the things that God said to me early doors in my Christian walk, I used to pray in front of my kitchen window, get down on my knees and I'd pray. And I was praying in tongues one morning and God said to me, set the captives free. He said it twice. So I think is also, sorry. So he told me to set the captives free, which I think I do in terms of helping people to understand the truth. But the real truth is Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life. People become captives in their mind. They believe lies about themselves. They believe limiting beliefs. And they also struggle with forgiveness. It's the two big things that really undermine us. So I've prayed with hundreds of people, must be about 200 people now. And the Holy Spirit will show you who you need to forgive. It's amazing. But not only that, so he shows you who you need to forgive. And then when you forgive him, bring your bitterness and your lack of forgiveness to the foot of the cross and leave it there for God to deal with. Because vengeance is his. Even though like we think bad things about people is going to do it, all it does is it upsets us. It messes up our atmosphere.
Doesn't it just?
So, it's a nightmare. So just let it go and pray blessings on him. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, eye for an eye tooth. I say, love your enemies. Bless them. So pray blessings into their hearts. It's amazing. I've got other stories where people have actually handed themselves into the police and all sorts, Andy. We haven't got time here, right? But forgiveness is so powerful and it lets God have access to his full palette. Because imagine the person who's hurt you, imagine if they actually came to full faith, if they really knew who they were in Jesus, if they really knew what Jesus requires of them to love their neighbour as themselves and love God, they would change. I've seen people change. Case in point, Graham Seed, Sowing Seeds Ministries. First time I met him, he took my baton off me in a chip shop. And that was quite scary. But I ended up sending him to prison. But then he became saved. I was not even praying for him then because I wasn't a Christian. But he told me about Jesus. He said Jesus had come and saved him in a coma, brought him back to life, off life support. I just couldn't understand it. But 10 years later, I had a supernatural experience. I went to church and Graham was there. Now, having been like a nuisance, a criminal, someone who was sleeping on a bench, he was now standing there, his hands up, praising God, with little Caleb and Boaz, these beautiful kids running around his legs, and his wife Natasha sitting there. And I wasn't sure. I was still cagey if this was real or not. So it took me about 6 months of sitting listening to the gospel and just getting, every week my heart would get warmed. And I'd go out of there, I think to myself, I'd feel better, like my batteries were charged. The pastor had been speaking to me, and I said, yeah, I want to get baptised. And guess who was doing the baptisms? Graham Seed. So the man who I sent to prison introduced me to Jesus and baptised me, introduced me into the kingdom of God. God is amazing. I don't know what you're listening, anybody who's sitting listening to this, if you're wondering if God's got a plan for you, I'll spare you the suspense. Yeah, he does. He does. And he loves you. Your life is significant. You're part of a big family that you don't even know yet. He loves you. And he's desperate. He's like, my favourite painting is The Light of the World by, I love The Road to Emmaus as well, but Light of the World by Holman Hunt, hangs in St. Paul's Cathedral, and Jesus is standing knocking on a door. And he's got a lamp in his hand. There's no handle on the door. It's because the handle's on the inside. You've got to open it. Go on, Andy.
You do. I'm just trying to move us on. So that's you in the CPA and the police as well. I love how God has taken some of who you are and used that. You're not police officer anymore. You're not in the CPA anymore. So
No.
What are you doing now?
Okay, so great. Thank you so much. Great question. So keep me back on track. So the next year, December, I'm driving over to this carol concert again in Preston, praying and thinking to myself, maybe God will tell me what's going to happen. Because when I finished with the CPA, Festival Teesside happened. So I was allowed to be involved in a massive church unity movement called Transforming Teesside Together. Remember Salt in the River, praying for unity? I got to coordinate hundreds of volunteers over a weekend where 1,700 people made decisions for Christ. Wow. We threw the church in Teesside through a massive party in Stewart's Park in Middlesbrough. The church all put in money together. We paid £300,000 to have the Palau Association come and basically have top Christian artists playing music. There was Christian BMX. There was folk doing there was stunts on trapeze. There was things for the kids, bouncy castles, face painting. We just threw this massive party. 1,700 people made decisions for Christ. Over the course of a week, 2,000 people gave decisions for Christ. And following that, there was 50 alpha courses running at the same time. So praise God. Oh man, he's absolutely answered prayers here. And there was over 100, there was up to 100 baptisms at Easter this year. The kind of swell from Festival Teesside is still continuing. But a week after Festival Teesside finished, I was mowing my grass and I got this pain in my chest and my arm, and I had 2 blocked heart arteries. Didn't realise. If I'd stayed sitting in front of my computer being sedentary at working at CPA and hadn't listened to God, I'm pretty sure I would have dropped dead here in my office where I'm speaking to you from. I wouldn't have realised. But the timing was perfect, and I got 2 stents in my heart. One artery was 99% blocked. They weren't even sure they could stent it without opening my chest up and doing bypass surgery, but it gave me my life back. So from July 27th up until Christmas was my recovery. And even though I was no longer the CPA guy, I wanted to go to the CPA conference and Christmas Carol conference in Preston, because I love the guys over there, and I love Preston as well. I love visiting Lancashire. I don't know why. I just love it. But praying in tongues all the way across with my wife this time in the car, probably making sure that I wasn't getting told to do anything else. God spoke to me and he said, I want you to start a channel called Get Wisdom, based on Proverbs 4. Get wisdom, get understanding, do not turn away from my words. And so at this time, Kath was talking to me and God speaking to me. So I was trying to answer Kath and not be rude, but listen to God at the same time. And it's just as we were dropping into this little town called Osbaldiston, he spoke to me really clearly. So I started looking into I had a YouTube channel where I've put a song that I wrote years ago, and some music videos of songs I wrote years ago. So I had little bits and bobs on there, but I hadn't ever done it on purpose, kind of. So I looked into it. So I formed my own business, and I've called it Turn2Wisdom, TURN, 2 Wisdom, all one word. And so Graham Seed is really, really busy, okay? And trying to get into his calendar to see him is very difficult. Anyway, just after Christmas, he'd heard about me going to Preston and being told to start this channel. And he's like, right, let's do some filming. So he came round and I had him 2 weeks in a row. He came round to me film, just sitting in these chairs behind me here. And his microphones, he bought them to make videos himself, gave me them for the channel. And so did 2 interviews with him. I did an interview with an amazing guy from America, my friend Paul Brian Kim, who baptized people in the desert. Guy got raised to life when he prayed for him. I've been over to Manchester, interviewed Deborah Green, OBE from Redeeming Our Communities, who said, you should meet Andy, you'll love him. And I do. I love you, Andy. You're great. I love what you're doing. And then interviewed a lady called Sue Sinclair from Community Watchman Ministries in Liverpool last Saturday. And that's the best performing podcast yet. So I didn't send links to anybody. I didn't do any kind of marketing. And there's been 160 views of the video. So it's outstripped every podcast I've done so far. So I've got 54 subscribers. I've got one video that's got 160 views. But you know what? Like putting the salt in the river, God's told me to start a channel. I started a channel. It's up to him to do whatever he's going to do with it. But when I visited Deborah, we were praying and she said prophetically that she saw that the channel at the moment was an embryo. And when we were praying, I saw this big hand in my mind's eye, and it had a pink 5-leaf flower in the hand, and he went, and it landed on the UK, this little flower. And then he went, and some more flowers started landing in Europe and stuff. Then he went, and a bigger load started going all over the world and into Africa and all around the top of Europe and into America. And then it just went, and all these pink flowers just filled the atmosphere all around the world. And I looked, and I think I can't remember what prophet it is that wrote it, but he said, the world and its fullness thereof will be filled with the awareness of the glory of God. So I think you, with Pure 24/7 Radio and me, and people like Deborah Green, and Graham Seed, and Paul Brian Kim, and Sue Sinclair, I think we are all like these pink flowers. The breath of God is the Holy Spirit. Ruach, that's what it is. And so by his breath, the world is becoming filled with the awareness of his glory. We're in a time now where there's things happening in the UK and further afield. They're calling it the quiet revival because the young people between 18 and 30 are coming to know God. They're hungry to know about God. And you know what? It's the best thing I ever did. And it all started with an attitude of gratitude. So I was thinking about this on the way home today after being doing some jobs. And I'm thinking when Paul was writing in Romans, he talks about coveting. Coveting is kind of covet your neighbour's goods, you covet your neighbour's wife, you covet your neighbour's things. The love of money, the love of things, the love of mammon is the root of all evil. So worldly possessions, if we hold worldly things lightly, Jesus wasn't against money. They came to him, didn't they? Said, should we pay our taxes? He says, show me a denarius. Whose picture is that on there? Caesar. He says, well, give to Caesar. Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar. What belongs to Caesar. Render unto God what is his. So we live in the world. We can't avoid money. We need it to buy our shopping and stuff. But it's if you want bigger cars, bigger houses, bigger body parts, bigger anything, whatever it is, you know, you're making a mistake. Be grateful for what you've got. We've got nothing. We haven't got a breath. We haven't got a thing that God hasn't given us. And when you start being grateful for what you've got, even the tough stuff, there's like Corrie ten Boom talks about being grateful for the fleas. And you're like, how can that be in a horrible situation? And she said, because it kept the corrupt abusive guards off her and her sister, kept the horrible, evil people away from them. And if we can be grateful, scientists are saying gratitude and anxiety can't exist in the same space. God's word just never comes back empty. Science keeps proving you follow the perfect law that is like a mirror of how we should be living. Follow it, and things start going right. Things start becoming. It's like even in the storms, Jesus said, "You'll have difficulties, you'll have tribulations, but in the middle of the storm, if you've got gratitude for what you've got, gratitude for the opportunity to have the storm, God takes care of everything else."
Which is perfect and a really good place to shop, because we have to stop. If people want to come and find you and your podcast channel, how do they do it best? Just remind us of that. It's a YouTube channel. Yeah,
there's a YouTube channel. There's a Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcast. All you do is Google Turn2Wisdom. God's been really good. I have got no SEO or anything. It comes up the top of the search. You can put it in YouTube. Comes up the top of the search. So it's one word. Turn2Wisdom. Turn2Wisdom. Google it and go in there. You can listen to Graham telling about how he was raised to life. Paul, Brian, Kim. And you hear Graham and I, we went on a road trip to Leatherhead recently, and we have a great laugh together. Mm-hmm. So, but Deborah Green's podcast is just so inspiring. Sue Sinclair's podcast is just so inspiring and challenging. Do it, listen to it. Ask God to bring unity in your area and show you what you can do for your little square of the world to be your part of the jigsaw. Activate your life, become who you were born to be, and just love it. Go for it.
Brian,
thanks, Andy.
Thank you. We're going to have to wrap it up for time. Really appreciate it. Just hearing some of your story, and it's beautiful. Yeah, go on YouTube, Turn2Wisdom. Go and check out the podcast. Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you know that at Pure 24/7 Radio, we also offer advertising? Advertising really does work. Let's face it, you're listening to this. Want to know more? Well, just go to pure247radio.org, pure247radio.org/advertising, and you can get everything you want and more there.